reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to his disciples, "To you who hear, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. To the person who strikes you on one cheek, offer the other one as well. And from the person who takes your cloak, do not withhold even your tunic. Give to everyone who asks of you, and from the one who takes what is yours, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. For if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. If you lend money to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners and get back the same amount. But rather love your enemies and do good to them, and lend expecting nothing back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he himself is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Stop judging, and you will not be judged. Stop condemning, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and gifts will be given to you. A good measure, packed together, shaken down, and overflowing, will be poured into your lap. For the measure with which you measure will in return be measured out to you." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Today we have something special going on. Brother Reed is going to be admitted to the office of Acolyte, and it's a part of his progress towards the priesthood. They used to be called minor orders, or like kind of lesser orders. The greater orders are deacon and priesthood, and along the way, as a person goes through seminary, you get sort of installed in these offices that kind of culminate with the larger ordinations. And today he'll be receiving the office of Acolyte. So that'll happen. I'm going to give a homily right now. Then there's another prescribed homily, which is you'll be glad to hear is short, and then he'll be installed in the office. But it's good that we have these readings today on this occasion of Reed's installation, because I think ultimately they lead us into the mystery of service. The mystery of service that Reed will sort of take upon himself, or is beginning to take upon himself in a formal way within the ministry of the church. But the readings prompt us to understand all forms of service, whether it's ministerial, kind of in the ordained way, within the context of the life of the church, or even just simply the service that's proper to Christian life. That this is the means by which the Lord liberates us. We hear a little bit about the final liberation that the Lord wants from us. St. Paul talks about it in his letter to the Corinthians. He talks about the risen body. He's talking about the risen body of the Lord, which appears on Easter Sunday, but also the risen body to which we are, for which we are striving, for which we are destined by Christ. And the Lord discloses the risen body on Easter Sunday, his own risen body, in order to beckon us forward. He puts before us the reward, this perfect freedom, this perfect liberation that St. Paul describes a little bit. He says that the first Adam, the Adam described in the book of Genesis, was a living being, which was characterized by a natural body. He had a natural body like our own, an existence like ours. But then the risen Lord discloses to us a different sort of body, a spiritual body. And I read a beautiful description, a beautiful theological description, a spiritual writer had kind of distilled from the writings of the medieval theologians how these different bodies are constituted in relation to one another. And it's kind of, and in fact, what caught my eye in the opening prayer was the idea that we're supposed to be thinking about spiritual things in the course of our Christian life. So maybe this will be something this is a spiritual thing that you can maybe think a little bit about. But the natural body, The body of Adam, the body that you and I have, is characterized by a body and a body and a soul, a fleshly component and a spiritual component. And the body, we might say, kind of sets the agenda of the soul. The soul comes to the body in order to animate the body and then elevate it. So the body has a series of processes that have to occur. We have a liver that has to function, a heart that has to beat, lungs that have to breathe, and a brain that has to fire in all the ways that it does in order for us to live. And the soul comes to this apparatus and animates it, gives it life, and then elevates it. We have these higher faculties as well that are enacted through the body, higher intellectual processes, creative powers, and so on, that are clearly rooted in our bodily processes, but seem to go beyond them as well, our capacity to philosophize and come up with literature and so on. All of these distinctively human activities that are enacted in the body, but are a sign of the presence of something higher and spiritual. But the body kind of sets the agenda, as it were, of the soul. But at the resurrection, it goes the other way. At the resurrection, the body I should say that the soul and its expansive spiritual characteristics kind of set the agenda for the body. That the materiality that we're joined to at the resurrection kind of comes into and participates in the spiritual nature of the soul. So as of right now, in the natural body, the soul finds a physical structure that's confined to one time and one place, that requires nutrition, that has all of the limitations that we're used to from living in a physical, fleshly body. But of course, we're trying to exceed those limitations in all kinds of distinctively human ways. We invent technology so that we can move about faster than our bodies would on its own be able to do. Or we invent things like a written word so that we can record knowledge, so we're not limited only to what we can learn in our own time and place on our own. We have these ways of kind of overcoming the limitations of the physical body that we're in now. And the Lord sort of blesses that activity. It's a sign of our yearning for an expansiveness. But that final expansiveness, the completion and crowning of that ambition will only come at the end, will only come at the resurrection, when the Lord accomplishes in a way that the Lord could only accomplish this final liberation of the flesh, or what John Paul II will call the redemption of the body, the final elevation of the body by its being subordinated to the prerogatives of the Spirit, this universality. And we see this in the risen Lord. The risen Lord discloses to us this spiritual body, a body that is, again, joined to this universal freedom, this unimaginable freedom of the spiritual soul. We see the Lord recognizably human. He clearly has a body. He's moving about. He's being touched. After his resurrection, he's being touched. He's eating things even on at least one occasion. But at the same time, passing through walls in more than one place at one time. He's recognizably in a body after his resurrection, but no longer confined to one time and one place. But even as the Lord discloses this freedom, even as the Lord discloses this great liberty, the risen Lord retains on that liberated body the wounds of his crucifixion. On Easter Sunday, he discloses himself, and in Luke's Gospel, he says, "Look at my hands and my feet, see that it is I." And then in John's Gospel, he shows the wound in his side to Thomas. So it's an incredible thing that even liberated in the way that he is at the resurrection, and then eventually, of course, seated at the right hand of the Father, even in glory, the risen Lord retains the wounds of his crucifixion, as though to indicate to his disciples emphatically, in order that they might never lose sight of how he came to possess his glory and how they will come to share it by living a life of service, by living a life of humble love, by taking up all that those wounds signify? The life of humble love, the life of service. That this ended as we read the passage from the Sermon on the Mount, or the Sermon on the Plain rather, that comes from Luke's Gospel. We hear Christ telling us how to begin experiencing the liberation that we see in the full in the risen Lord, or as we contemplate the possibility of our own resurrection from the dead. We begin to experience that liberation by taking up the life of service. We experience that liberation by devoting ourselves to mercy, love, this radical forgiveness, this radical generosity. And it's in our embrace of that life that we begin in the here and now to undergo conversion, to undergo a kind of a lesser resurrection, or a more full experience of life that will be to all the world a foreshadowing and a sign of the new life to come in the final resurrection. This life of service is at the heart of the whole of Christian life, but of course it's the life of service. It's one that Brother Reed will enact within the church's sanctuary, within the church's service. And the ministry of Acolyte it's essentially the service of a server, of an acolyte at Mass. But of course for Reed it's a more solemn undertaking, in as much as it's a part of his progress towards the ultimate goal of being ordained a priest. But I think within the church's worship, we see that the life of service is animated by our reception of the Lord's service. Within the church's worship, within the church's celebration of the sacraments, we receive the Lord's service to us in order that we might be nourished and impelled, emboldened to go out into the world, undertaking the life of Christian service that will proclaim to all the world the means by which its redemption, its liberation will be effective. Those to be instituted in the ministry of Acolyte, please come forward. Brother Reed Frey.
Present.
Dear sons in Christ, as people chosen for the ministry of Acolyte, you will have a special role in the church's ministry. The summit and source of the church's life is the Eucharist, which builds up the Christian community and makes it grow. It is your responsibility to assist priests and deacons in carrying out their ministry, and as special ministers to give Holy Communion to the faithful at the liturgy and to the sick. Because you are specially called to this ministry, you should strive to live more fully by the Lord's sacrifice and to be molded more perfectly in its likeness. You should seek to understand the deep spiritual meaning of what you do, so that you may offer yourselves daily to God as spiritual sacrifices acceptable to Him through Jesus Christ. In performing your ministry, bear in mind that as you share the one bread with your brothers and sisters, so you form one body with them. Show a sincere love for Christ's mystical body, God's holy people, and especially for the weak and the sick. Be obedient to the commandment which the Lord gave to His apostles at the Last Supper. Love one another as I also have loved you. Let us stand. Brothers and sisters, let us pray to the Lord for those chosen by Him to serve in the ministry of Acolyte. Let us ask Him to fill him with His blessing and strengthen him for faithful service in His church. God of mercy, through your only Son, you entrusted the bread of life to your church. Bless our brother who has been chosen for the ministry of Acolyte. Grant that he may be faithful in the service of your altar and in giving to others the bread of life. May they grow always in faith and love, and so build up your church. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Take this this vessel with bread for the celebration of the Eucharist. Make your life worthy of your service at the table of the Lord and of his church. Amen.